today to talk about active shooter and some preparedness for active shooter. A little bit about me and my background. 22-year veteran with the Carmel Police Department. My primary focus has been teaching firearms for the last 20 years. Firearms, that includes all kinds of aspects of training. I spent about a third of my career in the training division, a third of my career working narcotics undercover capacity, and a third of my career in the uniform patrol division. So we're going to go through here. If you have questions throughout this, please ask. Don't hesitate. Raise your hand. We'll talk about it. This is a discussion, open questions, okay? Some of this we're going to go through pretty quickly because some of it applies, some of it doesn't. And we only have about an hour or so, a little over an hour to go through this, so we need to move quickly on some of it. Why are we here today? This is the reason we're here. This is hospital shootings in the last few years. Some of these numbers I recently updated. More significantly, 9 active shooter incidents a year in hospitals from 2000 to 2005. What are they from 2006 to 2011? 16.7. Dramatic increase over the last few years. I don't have numbers. There are no numbers available from 2012 to 2015 yet, but I can assure you those numbers are going to go up from there. 2014. Does any of that look familiar to anybody? Pretty close. Purdue University, Elkhart, Las Vegas, Nevada. The reason that's up there, does anybody recognize that? Police officers killed in Las Vegas, Nevada. Those are 2 police officers sitting and having lunch at CC's Pizza. 2 people walk in, male and female, shoot and kill both officers eating lunch. They then walk across the parking lot to the Walmart, shoot a few people on their way into the Walmart, and they wait for the police to shoot it out when the police get there. Born and raised Lafayette, Indiana. They'd only been in Las Vegas about 6 months. So, local Indiana people. Elkhart grocery store, I was teaching up there about 20 minutes from Elkhart that morning that happened. The guy goes into the grocery store looking for one person to kill, he shoots her, and he just starts shooting other people. Florida Theater, high schools. What do these places all have in common?
They're soft targets.
Soft targets, and where do you go every day? Grocery store, theaters, schools, businesses, universities, mall in Maryland. These are places that we go every day. So not only does this apply to your workplace, this applies to your everyday life. If you're at the mall and you hear what you think are gunshots, do you wait to see if those are really gunshots? Or do you turn and go the other way? That's what we're having to ask ourselves these days. The history of this, what changed everything for law enforcement? Columbine. And most of you look like you're old enough to remember Columbine. That was a significant event. That's where the 2 kids went into the high school, had this well thought out, well prepared. They made bombs for the cars. They made bombs for inside the building. They made a phone call, got the 2 security officers to go out to the parking lot. While they're out in the parking lot, they start shooting their fellow students in the cafeteria. They had this plan for many months. Law enforcement showed up and waited 45 minutes to go in the building. Why did they wait? Because that's what they were trained to do. They were trained to wait for the SWAT teams. Even though there was 100 law enforcement officers outside, they waited for the SWAT teams. What happened last week in Paris? Same thing. What did the people do, the officers do that responded to the theater where the concert was going on? They waited 35 minutes before they went in that theater. Why did they wait? Because that's what they were trained to do. Paris is a little far behind in the training of what we are in the United States. Our philosophy is you're going to make entry as soon as you get there. Change the active shooter response from waiting for SWAT to immediate deployment. Immediate deployment means the first officers on the scene are going to be coming into this building looking to hunt down, shoot, and kill the active shooter. Virginia Tech. How many people remember Virginia Tech? Why was that significant? Because that guy took it one step further and he chained the doors to keep law enforcement from getting in. How many officers carry bolt cutters with them in their squad cars? Back then, none. Nowadays, we do in Carmel. We issue bolt cutters because we want to be able to make entry into these places, your facility included. Aurora, Colorado, that would be the orange-haired crazy kid that shot up the theater. He also introduced chemical agents into that theater. Did he introduce chemical agents to disorient the people or slow down law enforcement? We don't know, but it did slow down law enforcement because they didn't all have gas masks. And we didn't know what the agent was that he introduced. Each one of these have kind of a significant difference to them. Sandy Hook, probably the one that hits home the most for those of us who have children. That's where the kid killed his mom first, took her guns, went down to the school that she used to work at, and shot little kids. What's the motivation of some of these people? Biggest one is the highest number of victims. Virginia Tech, there was over 58 people shot in that incident. I think 27 died. Another big thing, ex-wives, ex-husbands, primarily ex-wives. Why is the hospital so significant in the fact of male to female? Ton more females working in hospitals. At the hospital I was at last week, they was figured as 85% female to male ratio. So, and it's more predominantly the males are going to be more aggressive to females. It's just the way it is. Over 160 active shooter incidents we studied in the last 10 years, I think only 6 were committed by females. So it's predominantly a male thing. Grudge against an employer. Why do you have, what happens here at the hospital, grudges against employers? What's the big thing here?
Termination.
Family members mad because their loved one died. Mental health issues. Are you seeing more people on the mental health side nowadays? I know we are. Do you have an ID facility? Do you have a mental health at all?
They bring them in ID.
Okay. I mean, we're
For evaluation.
taking tons right now off the street. And it's from 14-year-old girls to 70-year-old men. It does not matter these days. It's changed a lot over the last few years. Why is this a bad situation for you and law enforcement? Because 90% of these cases, they end in suicide. These people that come into your facility, they're not planning on going home at the end of the day. They know once they enter this facility and they start, there's only one way out, and that's going to be in a body bag. 98% of them act alone, and we'll hope that it stays that way in the United States, because as you've seen in Paris last week, once they start having multiple gunmen and stuff like that, the body count's going to go up dramatically. As I said, 90% commit suicide. 80% use long gun, rifle, or shotgun. Why is that significant? Would any of you notice somebody walking down the hallway of your hospital carrying a box, a long cardboard box, or would you even say anything to him? If he's not the UPS man or the FedEx man, it's probably not normal to be walking down the hospital with a box like that. If somebody carries a guitar case into your hospital, is that normal? Do you have Guitar Fridays or anything like that? You know how the kids take guns to school? Guitar cases. 2 or 3 incidents now in the United States. A kid carried it on the school bus. The school bus took him to school in his guitar case. He carried his guns. It's those common things that we don't normally think about, because I know most of us think everybody's good and we try to think of the good in people. Well, what I'm trying to do is change your thinking just a little bit. People are still good, don't get me wrong. But you have to be aware of those little things. You go, that looks odd. Maybe I should say something to somebody. If you see something, you need to say something. Whether it's calling security or a manager or somebody in your department, go, I just saw a guy walking down the hallway carrying a guitar case, and it's not Guitar Friday. So it seemed kind of odd for me. Have them check it out. Could be nothing. 6 recorded cases stopped by police. Why is that significant here in the hospital?
Because yes.
Do what?
Because we're going to be dealing with it.
You're going to be dealing with it, and you don't have armed security. So most of these cases, we'll get to that here, last about 6 to 8 minutes. So about 6 to 8 minutes, I'm trying to teach you how to survive these situations. And that's what we're talking about. That's why we're here today, is how to survive these situations for 6 to 8 minutes until Fishers PD, who is a very good police department. However, they can't be everywhere all the time. And if there's a crash on I-69 and they got 3 or 4 cars tied up, or there's a bank robbery at 126 and 37, there may be 6 or 8 of them tied up there. So there may only be 2 or 3 that are able to respond initially. Well, they may be coming from, let's say, 116th and Allisonville. How long does it take to get from 116th and Allisonville to here? How long? 5 minutes?
Policeman or us?
Well, the problem with it is though, even us driving with lights and sirens, you would not believe it causes me more problems when I turn my lights and sirens on because people go this way, this way, this way, this way. Sometimes it's easier to drive fast without lights. It causes more conflict. But think about that, how far away these officers could be responding in situations. 96 in Allisonville. You know? So think about these things. That's why the response of law enforcement is considered about 5 to 7 minutes, which is not a long time unless somebody's shooting you. And that's a long time. If you look at your watch tomorrow, today, and when you're doing your job, just look at your watch and sit there and wait for 5 minutes to pass by. It's a long time. Again, major goal of a lot of these people is body count. Department of Homeland Security, FBI, DOJ, Department of Justice report in 2013. Cases of multiple casualty, acts of violence prior to their rampages, subjects often had been perceived by at least one person as frustrated or angry and had often expressed these emotions prior to the event. Why is that important? Because somebody heard it, but you know what they did? They're just talking. They're not really mad. They're not going to come back and kill them. Anybody in HR in here? No HR people? Okay. A lot of times, frustration is somebody gets fired. They have frustration towards HR or their manager or whoever. They said something to somebody, whether it was a coworker, a spouse, or something. They said something to somebody. Potential subject's frustration or anger is likely to be expressed through threat or behavioral changes. What is probably one of the most common things where people express themselves these days?
Social media, social media.
Social media, the evil of all evils, namely Facebook. If we could get rid of Facebook, I think we could solve a lot of problems in the world today. How many people in here are on Facebook? Be honest, raise your hand. There's a few that's not. People post things on Facebook because why? Their face is not attached to it, per se. They hide behind that screen. So they're going to say things on there. And the problem with it is, what do you say is believable and what is not believable? That is where you have to make that determination as a human being of going, you know what? This doesn't seem right. I work with her every day. I've never heard her say anything like that. I've never heard him say anything like that. I'm going to say something to the boss, the manager, the security. Maybe something's going on in their life. How about if somebody comes to work every day for 5 years and they're on time every day, and all of a sudden, what's your name, sir?
Ryan.
All of a sudden, Ryan, he can't show up for work on time to save his life. 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, 20 minutes late. Would you notice that? Those are changes in behavior. And now all of a sudden Ryan comes to work, not only is he 20 minutes late, but he looks like he slept in his clothes last night. Those are changes in behavior. Something is going on in Ryan's life. Does that make him an active shooter? No. But those are subtle changes that you need to notice about people. And then all of a sudden, his wife is picking him up at the front door and dropping him off at the front door. And you're like, that's weird. No, that's called control. And it goes primarily with males and females. When men are trying to control women, they will do things like dropping them off at the door, picking them up at the door, because they don't want them socializing with anybody else in between. All of a sudden they have a cell phone, an iPhone, and all of a sudden they no longer have an iPhone because they don't want them communicating. Those are subtle changes in people's lives that you just want to take note of. Maybe say something to somebody. It's not a guarantee, but those are where we're getting into this, where people are seeing it, but they're not saying anything about it. In almost every incident of workplace homicide, that would be the death, 99%, the actor made threats prior to engaging in the shooting event. Similarly, most perpetrators of multiple casualty acts of violence that occurred in schools had a history of previous conflicts. So 99% of the time where a homicide occurred, somebody died, they said something to somebody. So if 99 people would have said something, could we have prevented at least a few of these? You don't know. But unless you say something, you'll never know. Previous conflicts, that's something that's very difficult, especially in your field with HIPAA and all that sort of thing. You're not going to know probably from human resources whether somebody's had incidents in their past, unless it's something obvious or was in the newspaper or something like that. That's a very difficult thing to detect in a hospital setting. What is an active shooter? Anybody want to give me their definition of an active shooter? An active shooter is basically somebody coming through your building, killing people, moving from floor to floor, room to room, that's not contained. They have free reign of wherever they want to go. A barricade. This is where somebody may come into your hospital, say the emergency room, they shoot a couple people, and then they start barricading the doors, and basically nobody can come in or out. That's what happened in the Paris attack in the hospital or the theater last week. That went from an active shooter, they were shooting people all the way through town, then they went into a theater, they shot a bunch of people, and then they sat there and they waited for the police to show up. The days of keeping hostages are pretty much over with. It used to be people did hostages because they wanted to negotiate. Like if I got caught doing a bank robbery, I'm going to take the bank president, I'm going to hold him hostage until I can get out. I'm trying to get out, I'm trying to go somewhere. We're missing the point these days. These days, active shooters are there to kill people. They're not really negotiating on your behalf or anybody else's behalf. Your chances of survival decrease in an active shooter situation. They have nothing to bargain for or with. So an active shooter can become a barricade situation. And when that happens, the police are going to treat it a little differently. If somebody comes to your hospital and they shoot 10 people and all of a sudden now they're inside a patient's room and they've got a nurse and one patient in there, it may be an ex-spouse or something, that can become a barricade situation. And they may push the hospital bed up against the door and everything else. Nobody's coming in or going out. That's going to be treated differently by law enforcement. Barricade situation, they could be armed or not armed. They could come into the hospital and go into a patient's room and all of a sudden close the door behind them and barricade it. There's no shots fired or anything like that. It could just be a barricade situation. Immediate actions. What do you have in the hospital here for mass notifications? Overhead?
Yeah.
Look at that in my process.
Lockdown policies. What is our policy and procedure on lockdowns? Can we lock down? These are the kind of things we need to know if we don't know already. Internal lockdown plan. Do we have magnetic activated doors? And who has key card access?
Just our associates.
So if I take her key card access, then I have access throughout the hospital. Those are the kind of things you also have to remember. Barricading myself in this room is great unless somebody has the key card, to open the door. So think about those sort of things. That's where I want to take everything I can possibly take, push it up against the door to keep them out. Alert staff of credible threat. You got to have specific instructions when you do that. There's confidentiality, but there's also public safety involved here. What is going to be your policy to alert staff of a credible threat, and who's going to determine that credible threat? A lot of times hospitals work closely with law enforcement to determine, hey, this is what I've got, what do you think, and back and forth. Kind of has to be a working relationship there. Warn the public with a service announcement. What are you going to do? Are you going to put out over the intercom active shooter in the hospital? Or are you going to put out code blue, gray, silver, or something? What is the policy here?
Well, we're going to plain language throughout all the St. Vincent hospitals. Today, I would say we should say where the active shooter is.
Sure.
Let everybody know.
Absolutely. And we believe in plain English, because here's the thing. If I'm in an emergency room and there's an active shooter in the opposite end of the building, I'm exiting out the doors, not looking back. And we need to let people, also the people that are in the building, that are not staff, not patients, they need to know where do I go? There needs to be clearly posted signs which way to get out. A lot of hospitals, it goes back and forth. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I was teaching and they had a Code Silver alert. And to me, I think of Code Silver, I think we've got an old person lost in the hospital. Because that's, for state of Indiana, that's what Code Silver means. The objective is to stop the active shooter. That is the #1 objective, and we're going to talk a little bit when this is all comes stuff with the drill that we're going to do. But stopping an active shooter, we're going to talk about that. How can you stop an active shooter? And remember, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple active shooters stopped in the United States, or I guess one was, I think, in England, where the Americans, 2 or 3 Americans, stopped an active shooter on a train. basically the United States, I think the people are starting to realize that, hey, I have to take action on my own now. California, there was a stabbing at a university. It was stopped by, I think, another university student and 2 construction workers. So we're starting to realize we kind of have to change that philosophy. Instead of waiting for law enforcement, we have to take action ourselves or become a victim. Provide intelligence to the command. What's important about that? Well, we need accurate information. How many people did we see? You know, if you saw somebody shooting people running down your hallway, you need to let them know how many people, what kind of weapons did they have, what did they look like, and don't say they were wearing blue scrubs. You know, you got to be more specific than he was a white guy with black scrubs. Well, you know, give me he had a beard, he was, you know, tall, he was short. Give me some detail on that information, because when law enforcement's arriving, we need to be specific. And when you have a hospital where a lot of people are dressed alike, you need to have as much specific information as possible. Rescue victims. When are we going to rescue victims? After. Unfortunately, afterwards. We actually issue tourniquets out to all officers now, not to help victims, but to help themselves. So if you get shot on a situation, I can put a tourniquet on myself and try to save my own arm or leg or whatever, or keep myself from bleeding out.
What do you think that is?
We just had a baby.
It's better than an active shooter alarm, right?
Yeah, that was an active shooter alarm. That's very subtle. I would go with something a little more lively than that. Render safe the entire facility. How long can you be hiding in your desk, in a closet, in a broom closet, until law enforcement can render this building safe? Hours. Bring some water and a snack, because you're going to be there a while. Sandy Hook, one of the ladies in Sandy Hook, I think it was 3 to 4 hours she was underneath her desk. Because it's going to take law enforcement hours. I don't know how many square feet you have here, but it's a pretty good sized building. And they're going to have to go room to room with a hospital person, because they're going to need access. They're going to need, where's the cubby holes at? Where's the nooks and crannies? Where does this door go? You know, so room to room to room, folks, you're going to be there for a long time. So keep that in mind. Basically what we're trying to do is prepare yourself. If it ever did happen in a situation, you'll know that being there 3 hours is not unusual. It's going to take law enforcement quite a while. Fishers is not big enough to search this whole hospital probably by themselves. They're going to call Carmel, Noblesville, other agencies will be responding to this hospital to help them out. Because once you render an area safe, I have to leave officers here to make sure it stays safe. So it's going to be a very methodical deal. Preserve the crime scene. Basically, if you have an active shooter in your building, and at the very end, after you rendered aid, it becomes a crime scene. So you're going to be basically days of preserving the area and taking evidence out of here. First officers on the scene should communicate all known intelligence and predetermined roles. This is where you come in. You have, I assume, a central line to the security department. Okay, the information that you guys provide to the security is going to be vital to law enforcement when they arrive. Because when law enforcement arrives, they need to know, where was he last seen at? And I'm sure this hospital has cameras, correct? That is the second most valuable information law enforcement can have. To track an active shooter on the cameras is so important to us. Because if I come in door 5 and he's all the way at the other end at door 45, then I got to run the whole length of this building. It doesn't do me any good. Besides that, how many people are going to die between the time I entered here and could have entered down there? That's where the valuable information, cell phones, texting, whatever it takes to get information out to somebody. When possible, we should have one person staying outside. Is there any security people in here? They're waiting for the 7:30 tomorrow night class.
Tomorrow morning.
I'm kidding. So basically, you know, that might be one of you as an administrator. It might be you standing out there. If security's tied up or they're not functioning, it may be one of you standing out there providing law enforcement with information. You only have how many people on duty at a time in this building? Oh, one. Okay.
Don't say it like that.
Well, it's not a lot. One's not a lot.
So sorry for you.
Especially if he's not functioning anymore. Because if I come into the building and I take out security first, then who have you got?
AR.
I'm saying here, folks, is that you may be the one responsible for meeting law enforcement outside to provide that information. Because if you only have one security person, who's monitoring the cameras? Nobody. So they may just come to you and say, hey, I need to get in there. Who can let me in there? Who can't let me in there? You're it. Wow. There she is, right there. Push her out the door. She's the one who's going to handle it when they show up. You see what I'm saying here is you may have to step up as employees, administrators, and everything of going, somebody has to fill this role. And today it's me. So remember that. This is probably what you're going to see law enforcement look like when they come down through your hallways, through your hospital. This is a basic, generic contact team of 4 officers. You've got 1 guy facing rearward and 3 guys forward. And they're not going to be friendly to you. They will be all about business. And they are going to hunt down and find the person causing the devastation in your hospital. And their simple goal is to find them and kill them. As plain as I can make it, folks. We would like for them to commit suicide before we get there because it's a lot easier on the officers to deal with later on if you don't have to shoot and kill somebody. But these guys are here for business and they're going to be passing you by. The best thing you can do, having your hands up so that they see you have no weapons in your hands as they pass by you. More than likely, by the time they get there, you're going to be hiding somewhere or running from the building. But if you do encounter law enforcement, hands up like this. They don't need to be all the way up, but hands out so they can see you have no weapons. They're going to be passing by injured. They're going to be passing by wounded. They're not going to stop and give you information. They may be asking you for information. Have you seen him? Which way did he go? What's he look like? That sort of thing. But they're going to be coming through here on a rapid pace because they're usually going to go to the gunfire. That's what we train our officers, to go to the gunfire. So if they're going down hallway number 1 and then they hear gunfire down hallway number 2, they're just turning and going. They're not stopping and checking on people as they go. Usually you're going to see 3 or more officers. Well, how many officers does Fisher's Police Department have on at a given time? Just depends on what's going on. They could have up to 8, 10 officers on. The first officer here may be going by himself. Depends on his motivation. Victims. If you can communicate with a loved one on the outside by a text message, let them know you're in room closet 42 on the 3rd floor. That's information, if you can get it out, may be useful to law enforcement later on. Exercise caution. If we're not seeing suicide belts in this country yet, and I hope we never do, but as you've seen in the last couple weeks, folks, they're blowing each other up like crazy over there right now. And the stuff they used, everything they used to make those suicide belts, you can buy at Ace Hardware. So we're not talking about people who did all kinds of sophisticated things to make these suicide belt bombs, vests. It's all stuff I can buy at the Home Depot, Lowe's, that sort of thing. So they were communicating by PS4s, PlayStation 4s is how they were communicating with each other. So we're not talking about encrypted, all kinds of great communication stuff. These guys are rude. They're just very rude when it comes to all their communication skills. Rescue team may be made up of police and EMS, tactical medics. There may be medics coming through the building with the SWAT teams or the officers. Victims response. What is your philosophy here in the hospital right now if you had an active shooter? What would you do?
Run.
I'm with the lady that's running. Anybody else? Run, folks. If you can get out of this area, get out of the building. Yes, I know we have a patient responsibility. Well, if you're dead, then you're not going to do the patient a whole lot of responsibility. It's going to be a determination you have to make as a human being on what you do. But I can assure you what we're seeing is running is the #1 favorite thing. If you watched 60 Minutes last night, the mayor of Washington, D.C., she said, hey, folks, it's changed. You better run if you can run. You better hide if you have to hide. In the last resort, if you have to stay, you better be ready to fight. And that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, in this country, it's changed. We still think people are good, but we do have to deal with the bad ones. Unfortunately, in the healthcare setting, you are a hotbed for these situations. Females, mental health patients, the majority of all these people that we've dealt with on active shooter, the major ones, all mental health issues. Diagnosed or undiagnosed, all mental health issues. They're great people as long as they're on their meds. How many times have we heard that? I mean, it's almost a daily call we get. Man, they're a really good kid as long as they're on their meds. Well, unfortunately, they don't always stay on their meds. And that's when usually you see them here in the hospital. You can shelter in place, and that's the same thing as hiding, okay? And we're going to walk through the building here in a little bit and look at some of the areas that you work in and what you can do to barricade these or hide in these doors. Evacuate to a safe area, hiding behind locked doors. How many people in this room know which doors lock in their department or their area that they work in? Or do you have doors that lock? Because we don't want patients locking themselves in the room because that's the business we're in. Unfortunately, it goes against us, and that's what but does the bathroom door lock? Or do you guys keep the little key up there that unlocks it so everybody knows already how to get in the bathroom? Take the key with you. You got to think outside the box. There's some risk in evacuation. Yes, there's been shootings in the high schools where the kid pulls the fire alarm and all the kids run down the sidewalk because that's what we teach them, like cattle, to run down the sidewalk, and the kids outside shooting them as they run outside. That was Tennessee or Kentucky, happened a couple times now. So when you run outside the building because the fire alarm is pulled, do you look around? Do you notice anything, or you just go, oh great, fire alarm drill? Think about those sort of things. We're trying to change the mentality that you don't just go through the day of going, it's not going to happen here. Just be aware of your surroundings. We want you to be more aware. We're trying to change that philosophy. Homeland Security. They're wanting you to be aware of your environment and any potential dangers. How many people come to this hospital every day and they park within the same 2 or 3 parking spots? We are creatures of habit. Creatures of habit. How many of you know who parks next to you? How many would you notice if there was a guy with 10 guns strapped to him the next morning sitting there beside you? Would you even notice him? Would you say something? I know it's kind of funny, but actually people don't realize what's around them, because we kind of go through the world. I'm going to work, I know where I park, the car almost parks itself, it knows where it's going, and then I stumble into the hospital, and I go up to my office or my workstation. We don't see what's around us. We have to change that. We have to see the things that are around us. If I pull into the parking lot on Monday morning and I see a blue car sitting there, and I go, well, that's kind of odd. I've never seen that car, and there's 2 guys sitting in there. Why are they sitting in there? That's strange. This is you have employee parking? You know? Is it gated? That'd be crazy to gate employee parking. So you're thinking, that's kind of odd. Now, do you say something? Or do you just go, has nothing to do with me, I'm just going to continue on with my day? Do you say anything? Maybe, maybe not. Those are the kind of things I'm wanting you to realize. Start seeing what's around you. If it looks strange to you, then it probably is, because you park in that same parking spot every day. So let's say somebody's in your parking spot. That makes you mad, don't it? They know that's your parking spot, even though your name is not on there. They know they shouldn't park there. Those are the kind of things I want you to start paying attention to when you pull into the parking lot. Where you see people walking into this building carrying things that doesn't look right, or how about it's 85 degrees out in July and the guy's got a parka on down to his knees. Would you say something? Those are the that's how a lot of these people are walking into these businesses. Most of you look at it and you would go, wow, they should have known. Look at him, he's walking across the parking lot in a long coat. No wonder he had guns on him. But nobody says anything. Because we figure, none of my business, I don't care, I got things to do, I got meetings, I got this, I got that. We have to say something. How many people would stop somebody with no ID on walking through the hallways of this hospital? Better. Those are the kind of things you have to do. Question people, and you don't have to be rude about it. You can be the friendliest person in the world. Hey, can I help you find something? But why is this person walking through this hospital without an ID on? When you know that if they're going to be in certain areas, they better have an ID on. And I can tell you, if I walk through this hospital in a suit and tie and act like I belong here, most of you are never going to challenge me. Working narcotics for many years, I learned that I can walk into just about anywhere I want to, and as long as I act like I own the place, nobody will say a word to me. But if I walk through here and I'm kind of, slouchy and like, oh God, I don't know where I'm going, people usually question me. So question the people, even though they may be dressed and you may not be sure who they are, or you may think they're important or something like that. Most people are not that important. They may be a little offended, but so what? If they don't have their IDs on, which I'm sure that's the hospital policy, you must have an ID displayed. Sorry about you. But question those people. They could be coming through this hospital simply to see if they get stopped. Why is that important?
Planning.
Planning, absolutely. I was fortunate or unfortunate, I'm not sure, to apprehend a couple bank robbery suspects 2 years ago. They robbed several banks in Hamilton County and a whole bunch in Indianapolis. I was on a takedown detail. We've been watching these guys for several weeks. Long enough to the point where I was just like, please just rob the bank. I'm just tired of following you guys around. The planning these guys put into just robbing a bank, folks, would blow your mind. Day in and day out, they drove around and looked at banks to rob. They'd go get lunch. They'd go drive by a bank. They'd go visit a girlfriend. They'd drive by a bank. They'd steal a car. They'd move the car. They'd move the car from this apartment complex to that apartment complex. They'd go drive around another bank. For days they would do this, all for planning to rob the bank. So don't think it's beyond these people not to put the time and effort in to walk through your hospital and go, hey, I wonder if I'll get stopped. I wonder how many security people they have. I bet I can find out how many security people they have. I can walk through there and see if anybody stops me. So give them a little more credit than what we do. A lot of times these things are not just something I wake up this morning and go, you know what, I'm an active shooter today and I'm going to go shoot people. Virginia Tech, the kid there, he actually went to the target range, which was actually an outdoor, I think in the desert area, and laid targets down and shot them laying down on the ground. So he practiced for shooting people laying down. Because that's not normally something you do when you do target practice, it's usually standing up. So he actually practiced, he had videos on YouTube of him doing this. Where did he put it at? Social media, YouTube. Would anybody have seen this, guy shooting targets laying down and going, hey, that's kind of odd. Why would you do that? We don't say anything. We see it, we may think it's weird, but we don't say anything.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What do we tell? I mean, when you say anything, here in the hospital, I can see like calling security and saying
Yes.
like there's a weird car in the parking lot, but otherwise, is it worth calling the police or 911, or is it, I think part of it too is like, who do you report it to and
Well, your security is your first step here.
here? Right?
Absolutely. First step here is absolutely security. And, you can go to your security people and say, hey, I saw this. Even if you see a posting on Facebook, what can you do if you see a posting on Facebook? Take a picture of it with your phone. Okay? Because that way, if the person does get rid of it later, which is what we run into a lot of times when people post stuff and they go, oh, that was stupid, and take it down. Take a picture of your phone, show it to the security guy. If he thinks that, hey, there may be a little bit more to this, he can call local law enforcement. We have what's called intelligence groups here in Hamilton County, and we share information. Something may happen in Fishers, and they go, oh, that's kind of weird, and they'll do an intel bulletin. Say 3 guys casing a bank or something, we saw them, or 3 guys driving around the hospital at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's no explanation. So they may put out information bulletin to Carmel. Carmel will go, hey, you know what, we stopped that car last week. Same car at 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, now we're starting to go, hey, we've got something here. So you say something to the security guys about whatever you saw, say a posting on Facebook. And he goes, well, that's funny because the AR person said something last week about that same person about being tardy and possibly looking at termination. And now all of a sudden we're connecting the dots here. It's an intelligence thing as far as, there may be 10 other complaints on that person, but you don't know that. So you tell the security, that's why security, you have to have one hub for all information you go to. And so that security person then has to be on the ball and go, man, you know what, I've had 2 reports, 3 reports, now 4, I think I need to take this a step further. Whether that's going to management or going to local law enforcement. But that's where putting the pieces to this together, you may not know what's going on, but your little bit of tidbit of information, that's how we catch terrorists around the country. It's not from, you know, hey, Joe's a terrorist, I'd like for you to go arrest him. That's not how it works. You get tidbits of information. You may intercept little bitty pieces of the puzzle, and you have to put it all together. That's why fighting terrorism, fighting active shooters is such a tough thing. It's not something you just go out and do. You got to take all the little bits of information, put it all together, and try to make it make sense. Same thing in the hospital. You know, it's a very tough detail, very tough task.
So would like, I mean, I know this is not hospital related, but like mall security would be the same thing if you would
Absolutely.
see something odd in the mall?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the mall, I would even encourage you, if it's something odd enough, I call 911. You know, especially if you're too close to it or something like that. And let's face it, folks, if you hear what sounds like gunfire, don't go, it's probably just construction. Because unfortunately, these days, the mall on the west side of Indianapolis at the Target, you know, we shot 2 or 3 people right at the Target entrance. Mall shootings are also becoming, gang people run into people they don't like. Used to be they would like wait for them to leave. They don't wait for them anymore. They just go shoot them in the mall. It's kind of a change of behavior amongst these people these days. They don't wait for people to see them on a Friday or Saturday night at 2 o'clock in the morning. That shooting the other day was like 7 o'clock in the evening time, which most of you are probably still out at that time. But a lot of the things that are happening in this world these days are not happening at, you know, nothing good happens after midnight, the old saying. It's kind of different now. Pretty much it can happen anytime, any day. There's really no set time anymore on when things happen. How do you get out of the building? Make sure you know where your exits are. Is everything clearly posted in this building? So you know evacuation plans, where am I going to go? If you're in an office, stay there, secure the door. Attempt to take the active shooter down as a last resort. What do you have as weapons in your work area especially? I know we have a wide variety of people from a wide area of the hospital.
That's what I'm admitting to.
Absolutely. I mean, we got phones, we got great ink pens. Ink pens are great. But those ink pens need to become, you know, a weapon basically, through the eye, whatever it takes. Look around in your workstation. You know, what do I have? Computers, great for hitting people. Cell phones, hard objects, take the rubber soft case off the side there first. But what do you have on your person? Obviously you have a lot of different items in the rooms. You have metal tables, you have scissors, things like that, sharp objects. A weapon is only limited to your imagination. You know, if I have to, if 2 or 3 of us have to get together and rip those legs off of that stand right there, that's what it takes, that's what it takes. Now I got a nice metal club. Somebody comes through the door, all 3 of us at the same time are going to be clubbing them. That's the mentality you kind of have to think about. It's a survival thing. You can either become a victim or you can fight for your survival. And as we've seen in Virginia Tech, those students all curled up underneath the tables. So he just walked down through there and shot them as he went through each row. We don't want to go out like that. At least give ourselves a fighting chance. So that's where Alice, what we're teaching our kids in the schools. Everybody, several people in here have kids in the schools, or your kids are learning Alice. Basically, it's prepare your kids for an active shooter comes through that door. What am I going to do? Most of them have canned foods now, and they throw canned foods. And believe it or not, try to fight through 20 people throwing food at you. It's going to give that teacher or kids a chance to tackle that person, and it'll more than likely stop them. Or they'll at least go out fighting. And that's at the end of the day, you got to say, well, you know, curled up and died, or I went out fighting. And those, you know, I'd say go out fighting. But look around this room. There's a nice, actually I didn't see that, is that an ID pole? What a great weapon. But think about the things in your workspace. Staplers, great weapons. They're metal usually and they're sharp on the corners. Think about all those things. Take a self-defense class through YMCA or other things like that. Just take a self-defense class. I'm not asking you to become, karate expert or anything like that, but just take a self-defense class sometime with a friend or a sibling and maybe learn a couple things. Just a little bit of self-esteem going, you know what, I learned this. Make yourself a little bit more aware of your surroundings. This is what a pipe bomb can look like. What can a pipe bomb look like? Anything. But that's just a couple of the common PVC pipe, which is just basically a white plastic pipe. Next to it is a threaded metal pipe. Which one's going to do more damage? The threaded metal pipe, because the pressures are going to become a lot higher in that. But if you saw something like that laying somewhere, even in the parking lot or under a car or something, that's the kind of thing you want to say something about. Hey, I saw a metal pipe laying underneath a car that just didn't look right. Damage from flying debris, from explosions. Fire extinguishers, those are good weapons. You can spray them with the fire extinguisher, and if that doesn't work, you can hit them with it when it's empty. Both of them work well. We actually spray dogs when we go on search warrants. If we get attacked by a dog, a lot of times we'll spray it with a fire extinguisher. But we don't hit it with the fire extinguisher afterwards, but we do use fire extinguishers on dogs. Is everybody familiar with the works bomb? Won't play. They talk about IEDs. What is an IED? It's basically anything they want to make it out of. We've not seen in this country, a whole lot of this. Timothy McVeigh was probably the last big IED that we had, the Ampo bomb in Oklahoma City. Nobody has duplicated that since him. Thank God they haven't, because you've seen what Oklahoma still happened to that building. They parked one of those outside of this hospital, about half the hospital will be gone. Suicide bombers, it's not beyond them to do it in the United States. What more than likely happened in New York and places like that, Chicago, more than likely, yeah, probably. But could it happen in the metro Indy area? Could. Hopefully it never will. Are we a soft target? Absolutely. The Palladium, all the different sporting events and things we have, the big soccer fields and stuff over Westfield now with 4,000 or 5,000 kids at a time. Those are some of the softest targets known to mankind. Can you make them hard targets? No. There's almost no way to control those. I don't think we'll see that, but it's always possible. There again, it goes to where if you see somebody suspiciously carrying a backpack into an event that you just don't think it seems right, say something to the guy that's searching people, or say something. Or Deer Creek concert venue, talk about a soft target. Wow, that's an easy one. Just drive the car actually right through there into the middle of the crowd and blow everybody up. There's a lot of soft targets in Hamilton County. So think about these things just when you're outside of your workspace. Obviously, one of the biggest IEDs, flying an airplane into the building. Do we have a bomb threat protocol?
Well, once again, we're going to the plain language. So
I know, but like the caller takes information and all that good stuff. We have templates and everything. If we see a device that we think is suspicious, what do we do besides say something? Cordon off the area, get people back. You don't want somebody accidentally walking up to it and opening it. We'll leave that to the firemen. They usually are the ones that look in the bag first. So cordon off the area, just keep people away from it. And I don't think you can cordon off an area too big, because we really don't know what's in the bag. We do have bomb dogs now in Hamilton County. I think we have one in Carmel, and I think Fishers used to have one, and maybe getting another one.
They found something on the bridge out here, what, about 6 months ago? And they cordoned off the whole bridge, and it was a backpack or something that they just found sitting there.
Yeah, and that's kind of the old, hey, it just doesn't, why would you leave a backpack on a bridge?
Yeah.
You know, if you see people standing on overpasses, you know, keep your eye on them.
I don't like that.
They shouldn't be there. I saw it the other day and I thought, oh, is this guy getting ready to jump off? And I realized it was a police officer shooting radar on I-465. I was like, crazy guy. What's he doing? This is where we may ask you for your help. If we're going to search this hospital for an explosive device, we may not know the hospital well enough. We may come to you and say, hey, this is your workspace. What is normal? What's not normal? What is this? What is that cabinet? What's in this bag? You will know that space. I will not as an officer searching your building. You will have to help me out. Basically just talking about the grid searching, starting low, moving your way up high. Bomb threat procedures, which you said you have, so basically you're just going to go down there and you're going to try to record as much information as possible in reference to a bomb threat. A lot of, 99% of bomb threats are hoax. But the day you don't take it for real will be the day that it's not. Run, hide, and fight. Does anybody have any questions about run, hide, and fight?
Were you guys gonna show us the video for the hospital
Yes.
one? Okay. We showed the run, hide, fight, the office building, oh my gosh, what was it, 2 years ago, guys? We showed that, and then it's been a while.
This is a video the California Hospital Association put together.
Which I like, because the one we showed before was offices, it's different.
I'm not sure about sound here, so if it's too loud, we'll fix it.
We've watched the news and we've seen it happen in the schools, in the supermarkets, in the high-rise buildings. This scenario is going to be really focused on the healthcare worker. The best way I can put it is this is going to be a high-intense, high-energy drill that's going to really run you through the gamut of what it's going to be like in an active shooter scenario.
The active shooter drill is bringing together best practices so hospitals can come in, see what it's really like to be in an active shooter environment, and then being able to take these best practices back to their organizations.
But one of the unique things I think about this conference is rather than just being presenting a dialogue or presenting material, is that we're going to have an actual live scenario.
Even knowing that I had an active role that I was supposed to confront him with my patient, but the moment he pointed the gun at me, I couldn't confront him, even knowing it's a drill. I still couldn't, and then he shot my patient.
The active shooter scenarios that we have designed are designed to be realistic for the setting. We have designed it with participants staged throughout the area, throughout the emergency department in scenario 1, who will represent doctors, nurses, medical staff, visitors, and patients.
There's going to be high drama, there's going to be high emotion. They're going to want to help people. And by having a focus that refined, you tend to forget the most important thing, and that's protecting yourself.
Our participants, some of them have been informed as to their role. Others are going to react on the spot. And basically we want to train people to become aware of their surroundings and to follow 3 simple words: run, hide, fight. Run, hide, fight.
The scenario is designed to be replicating when a shooter comes into the environment and immediately starts shooting.
This morning we'll start off with an orientation event for the attendees. One, to make sure that they're aware of exactly what they should expect as they participate in the training sessions, as well as each shooter scenario.
We have over 200 participants. We're going to have 2 active sites going at the same time. The participants are going to be role players as well. In addition to that, we have off-duty police officers that are role playing as the active shooters, as well as the infiltration teams. This is a very, very large event.
The options are run, hide, or fight. The run will be simulated by walking quickly and exiting the building. The hide will be wherever they can find a location to hide from a shooter. The fight part, we've simulated throwing objects at that person by using training objects.
We brought in law enforcement, we brought in a variety of experts, content area experts, resource information, compiled it and incorporating it to make it something that the healthcare workers can use and apply to ensure safety and security for all involved.
At the end, we'll bring together panelists, a risk manager, someone from law enforcement, safety people, an RN, 2 emergency room physicians, and we're going to discuss what we learned today.
They will have the opportunity to experience the drama that's involved. The average healthcare worker has never been involved in an incident like this. We know that every healthcare facility has got to make that decision regarding how do we handle this as a protocol, as a policy, because you'll find out that there is no cookie cutter policy or procedure that you can follow for any given event. It's truly going to be something that your administration will have to take that burden on to make that decision. How do we want our staff to react in this kind of scenario? And others similar to it. Yes, sir.
In military tactical combat casualty care, it's like Bill was saying, everybody fights in the beginning. There's no care rendered. We don't do CPR in a battlefield. Everybody fights until the tactical situation is resolved. After that, then you have an opportunity to render care.
I protected the patient. I obviously put my body over the patient, and then I got shot.
Yeah, I was trying to think like, well, what would a family member think? The first thing I thought was, what was that noise? And so I got up to look. And then the second thing I did was run back and forth because I didn't know how to get out.
When law enforcement does come in and take down the shooter, they actually took him down in our area, and we were just like hiding until they were asking how many shooters there were. We're like, one, we're yelling it, and to remember to put your hands up.
And I realized that he can't see me if I can't see him. So I closed the curtain, and when I realized that he was systematically going through the rooms, I said, well, now I'm out of options, it's time to fight. So I grabbed what I was thinking was the IV stand and pan, or the a small grenade, and waited for what I thought I could finally see those footsteps or the edge of his weapon, and came out and tried to throw the grenade at him and confront him.
These guys aren't looking for a fight; they're looking for easy targets. So if you're presented with an opportunity, or it wasn't really an opportunity, you had a choice to make, and that was it. Maybe you have to fight at that point. But trying to talk to me coming down a hallway and can we reason about this when you just need me dump 2 or 3 people right in front of you? That's probably not the best call.
Put this on. Perfect. There's about 4 people from this room who escaped. They lived. They got out. And they were in a safe area. Okay? Other people tried to fight. Sometimes that worked okay. Other times it didn't work very well, right?
As soon as he started yelling at that area, we all noticed, and that's when we came out and closed the door.
Right.
Before he took out his first shot. So we didn't want to work as a team.
So we took the belt off, we put it on the handle, and it would be almost impossible for someone with one hand, gun with one hand, to pull that open. But the belt was a great idea, because everyone's hands were cramping up trying to pull up, plus with the belt, you could move away from the door and put your foot up against the wall. Someone made a great suggestion.
Right, and think about how your doors open in the facilities you work. Are they inward opening doors, or are they outward opening doors? At least you know if they're inward opening doors, if you barricade and you put stuff behind it, it's a good chance the guy's not going to make it in there.
All of the players today came together through the Hospital Association of Southern California. We meet on a monthly basis, and when we came up with this idea, it was based on events that are taking place around the world. We decided that it was really important that we do something, that we pull this information together, that we get law enforcement involved with us so that we can get the real expectation of what they're going to do when that awful or dreadful day happens inside of someone's hospital.
What's important is that people really understand that we need their participation in taking this educational component back to their associations so we're all prepared.
At the end of today, ideally, we'd like the participants to go back to their institutions and develop a local plan that will work at their hospital.
So when you know the procedure, when you know the policies, when you know best practice, you're in a better position to provide care.
We hope that it never happens in another facility again, but we also know that reality is it will take place again. And hopefully, by training, by learning, by being prepared, the damage and the trauma that comes to a healthcare facility can be mitigated by your experiences here.
Any questions about the video? Any parts you saw? Any comments on that? The office setting was a little bit strange, but what they were trying to, I think what they were trying to get by there is like if somebody was to come in and ask for a patient, like they went to the counter and said, hey, can you give me the patient's name or information, and then somebody else comes up and goes, hey, can I help you? Hey, can I help you? They're trying to overwhelm the person, and you can tell that he's like, I don't need your help. I'm looking for, maybe they asking for a teacher or something. So that's what they're trying to show you, is that's where that could come in the hospital. Somebody comes with registration, you're like, hey, I need this person's name, information. You're not going to give it out, more than likely, voluntarily. So.
Brigham and Williams Women's Hospital in Boston put together an excellent training video that the Indiana Hospital Association had up on their website. We're not 100% sure why it's been pulled, but you can't find it anywhere now. The premise is that they actually did have an active shooter scenario in January that almost followed exactly the script of that video. So it was a person coming in to find a doctor to kill him. So that is, it's real. It's happening. As Dwight mentioned, went to one conference a few months ago where the head tactical doc for Dallas SWAT, who's also at one of the hospitals in Dallas, said an instance where they had a child custody situation. Husband comes in, 10-year-old boy. And the summation was that the ex-husband thought the new boyfriend had beaten up his son. Came in with a gun, killed the wife, killed the boyfriend, shot a nurse, said, I'm taking my son out of here. And so the one thing that's changed dramatically is concealed carry permits. You know, they're pretty easy to get, realistically, in most states. But the bigger thing that's changed is we used to see people carrying a .380 caliber gun, 22, even a 9mm, and they will do damage. But a 40 caliber, if you're hitting the shoulder, you can bleed out until somebody can get to you. So the tactical medical situation that Dwight was talking about is critical now. And in some hospitals, they're actually going to tactical medical kits on each floor because it used to be in the ED, now we're seeing it in other floors. Pediatrics is a big area, so that we see incidents occurring. So that's one of the things that we want to make you aware of. The other thing is stabbings, carbon fiber knives. Okay, it's not just about the handguns. We've got hospitals, again, in Dallas, where almost all the major hospitals in Dallas have metal detectors in their EDs. You don't have one, do you? You think you could ever get St. Vincent to put one in? Most hospitals won't. You know, and you hope, you know, that you don't have to get to that. But one of the things that they've seen in Dallas is more people coming in with carbon fiber knives and using those as weapons. You know, because the issue with the carbon fiber blade is, anybody got a carbon fiber knife in this room?
With me or no?
Well, just
I mean, home, yeah.
Yeah, but the issue is with the carbon fiber blade, if I stick it in, I can also break it off.
Right.
And that's a real issue, okay? So the other thing we want to do today is we want to go around to each, you know, as many areas as we can and do a walkthrough and talk to you about, let's see what you've got in your areas and what you could use as a barricade, what you could use as for defense. Talk to you about, do you actually know where you would go? I mean, the issue is you see here, the one nurse that said, you know, even knowing this was a drill and it was a gun, when he put that gun at me, it was like, well, you know, most people aren't trained to deal with someone with a gun. When you hear a gunshot, like Brian said, did I really hear a gunshot? You know, the thing is, unfortunately, the world we live in today is, if you think it was a gunshot, your first instinct should be to run, your second should be to hide. And hiding is, like we said at the last measure, if any of you did or did not see the 60-minute scene last night, you know, they have talked about how the paradigm is definitely shifting to where if you can't run, you can't hide. You need to be prepared to fight for your life with anything and everything you have. It's as simple as that. So, and the more you have to fight, the better off you're going to be. So, from a group here, who's from where? Because we want to do this walkthrough. So where should we start, Mary?
Rick, I'm thinking honestly, we should probably start down at registration as you come into the ED area. There's two registration areas. You know, the ED registration area, but then medical imaging also has a wide open registration. That area. And then, I guess, Terry, your area, and that's where our drill will be to start with.
It will be.
And then we're going to come through the back part of the hospital, and then we're going to go up to med surge.
Right.
And then they'll have another part of the drill. You know, down front, you talked about somebody coming in the main door at the hospital and registration. That's manned by volunteers.
Right.
You know, they know not to give out names, but, you know, they're an older population, and they're not going to push back on people. They're going to come run into administration and ask for someone to come out and help somebody. I mean, that's just what they do.
The other thing that Dwight talks about, you know, it's like, you know where you park your car every day, right? So one of the things we always talk about in emergency management preparedness is situational awareness. What's out of place? Okay, now be honest with me. You get out of your car and how many of you are on your phones? Checking email, checking text messages. We're distracted. Okay? So a lot of times we may miss something. You know, but it is that innate strange feeling in your gut that says, man, that wasn't right. In the Northern Illinois University shootings, when the FBI did their after-action report, 27 students that they interviewed saw the guy dressed all in black, in a black raincoat, buttoned up from his neck to his knees, with a guitar case, and not one reported it. If it's out of place and your gut's going off and your alarm bells are going off, tell Mary. I'll pick on Mary. So
that's normal.
there you go. But be sure to tell somebody. I mean, that's really the key. And that's all you have to do. It just, if it doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, so.
Well, we had you come today because associates have been asking for another drill, kind of like the one that we had when we opened 2 years ago. We just have patients now, so it's gonna be a little bit different, but I still want people to be aware and think every day when they come in,
Yeah.
what they would do or should do.
Well, and also, knowing that we're a Catholic healthcare institution, whether that applies or not, you know, there is that moral, ethical aspect of, do I leave my patient or not, that you have to deal with. And that's gonna be, quite frankly, I don't care what your board says, and I don't care what Ascension Health says. It's gonna be a case-by-case basis on what you believe.
Absolutely.
And there's
It has
no
to be
right or wrong
individualized.
answer, you know, because Dwight's right. If you're shot and you're dead, you're not gonna do your patient any good. So.
And patients are not normally what they're coming after in your hospital. It's very rarely is it an active shooter comes into the hospital to shoot patients. It's just rare. It's usually going to be spouses, doctors, is their main parties who would be a focus of something like that. So.
Or HR.
Or HR.
HR.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. That's HR, and usually HR is very accessible in hospitals. I love it. These have been pretty close to the front door when you come in. I don't know why that is, but that's usually when they put them out.
Actually, put Danielle up the front, and then we've got HR way in the back now.
Oh, okay.
They'll see the pregnant with twins woman, they're like, nah, I'll go find another one.
All right,
All right, let's start the tour.